right now. We're going to get into our last couple segments here. We said we brought Wes on intentionally tonight to talk about officiating in general and give us maybe a little different perspective. Wes, I know you grew up like me, a 49er fan. You're a Bay Area sports guy. I grew up in NorCal, and so my question to you, I think I know the answer. My first one, just give us a little football perspective. Who's your favorite football player and why?
Like ever or playing
Ever,
now?
ever.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Jerry Rice.
Yes, that was the answer.
Hmm.
I'm going to go with
Yeah.
Jerry Rice. So part of it is when I was a kid, my dad took us. We did a family trip to 49ers training camp, and it was Jerry Rice's rookie season.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
that's cool.
So I remember that,
If
and
you knew
I
then what you
just
know now.
what's that?
If you knew then what you knew now, that you would witness the greatest wide receiver of
Right,
all time. That's cool.
right. I would have been a kid and had him sign my arm or something and had it tattooed. So different times. No, for me, Jerry Rice, he was dedicated to his profession, so he just wanted to do everything perfect, and he also thought out of the box. He got made fun of for doing ballet and to work on his footwork, and so he thought out of the box to be a better football player.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot of kids in Mississippi doing ballet.
No,
Be fair. Then probably not. No, I mean, obviously, you and I also share that, not just a birthday, but our love of number 80 and his absolute dominance and perfection on a football field. Um, but I guess I didn't put this on in our questions that I had preloaded for Wes, but like for you stepped out of coaching, coached a couple sports in the past and decided to become an official. Why in the world would you want to be a zebra and get yelled at and made fun of
Dude.
and have your integrity questioned on a daily basis and have Karens lining at the door when you try and leave a gym or a field? Like, why do you put yourself through that? What
Essentially,
is it
why
for
do you
you?
want to be the most hated man on the court
Seriously,
yeah.
I like,
or the field or what, and all the, yeah.
Yeah, so I loved coaching. The main sport that I really coached when I was younger and lived in Southern California was high school basketball. Loved coaching. I love the relationship with the players and stuff like that. I when I got into officiating, there's more freedom in your schedule in
Hmm.
creating your schedule to officiate, and it pays better.
Thanks.
I mean, it
There you
should.
go.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Like,
I
I
mean, it
see.
doesn't pay well, but it pays
Pays
better
better.
than coaching.
Yeah, and definitely on the on the very amateur level for certain it does. You get into that mid college ranks. I imagine those D2 coaches are doing just fine.
You
D3s are
two,
probably
yeah,
making it okay depending on the program, right?
yeah,
But D2 and up is doing really good.
yep.
I have thought about this before. I was like, man, why the discrepancy between when you watch like a football game and you see a $10 million, like LSU Tigers, head coach standing next to a dude that's making, not a bad salary. Don't get me wrong. D1 refs are doing just fine, and usually this is their second job, as we know on this show. Like they all have full time gigs and they do this on the weekends and do their training and whatnot throughout the year. But like when you see that guy standing next to somebody who's making 150K, just reaming into him, like I feel like we should balance the scales a little bit. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Well, now you could even put D1 players are making,
Oh,
That's fair.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So there is such a huge gap between officials and even players now.
Well, yeah, you got $3 million quarterbacks out there. This next year likely to be. I think there's an NIL that's saying they're going to put out 6.1 for a quarterback. in college football this next year? That's crazy.
I know a freshman D1 basketball player this year. His NIL is 100,000 a year, and he's only playing. He's maybe played 8 minutes this season so far.
Jeez.
That's the job I
Jeez,
want,
dude.
dude. What the heck?
I will
Yeah.
sit on the bench
Dude,
for 100K.
Right?
dude, I'll post up with my
Let's
camp chair and a fire and s'mores. You kidding me? I'd own that bench.
Dude,
let's
I'll
go.
wash the towels after the game.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, dude. I'll be the
Dude,
water boy. I'll run
toss
out Gatorade to him. Yeah,
hey,
I
all your
still have
sweaty gear
college
goes right here,
eligibility.
guys.
Like, come on.
yeah. Dang, man,
Well,
that's crazy.
on the end of like thinking through officiating, and we as fans constantly, and this podcast is no stranger to it. We come on here every week, and we know how much money. I mean, the NFL's made it public. They've said this is how much we're spending on all of our technologies to improve our officiating. This is how much we spend on training for our officials. And, we still see, even at the highest levels, officiating seems to be so difficult when it comes to consistency. It just for you in the everyday, what makes it so hard to be consistent? I know you don't have all that technology and all that stuff at your fingertips like the NFL gives their guys, but like what makes it difficult to be consistent?
Well, I can speak on the college level, because I
Sure.
do women's college basketball up to the D3 level. Kind of hopefully in the next year or so break the D2 level. But we do have technology, so a lot of what we do as officials and why it's so hard to be consistent. I mean, that's what you're really asking, right? Why is
Yeah.
it so hard for us officials to be consistent? Our crew is different every time, every game. So I may jump onto a court with two other partners working three-person officiating that I've never met before.
Mm.
So you're having to build your first meet and greet in the locker room. I mean, we do show up at least an hour and a half on the college level, an hour and a half before game time, and we go through pre-game. But even before we even get to the game, we've done our homework. So there is a lot of homework that goes into who are the top players on the team. And college level, we're looking at how heavy are they with seniors versus freshmen. Who's the who's their top scorer, outside shooters. We may watch game film before going into the game so that we know what the offense runs, the defense, that kind of thing.
So if I can ask, what's the point of doing that? Like, I feel like, I mean, obviously, someone who's never refed anything. Why would you do that and not just show up on the court and just call the game as you see it? Why is it important to know those types of things?
Got to know, well, part of the officiating is you want to flow to the game. So, do we have rules? Absolutely.
Yeah,
But like in basketball, nobody wants, well, even in football, you don't want a flag on every play,
right.
but you could probably throw a flag on every play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, in officiating, we call it an art of officiating, which is you have the rules, but how do you function within the rules? And so once you start calling a certain way, so for me with basketball, if my crew, and we talk about this, if we go of a 50-50 block charge, in other words, there's a play, drive to the basket, defender's there, offensive player goes right to the defender, but it's a 50-50. Do we go block? Do we go charge? As soon as one person on our crew calls, let's say player control, it's a charge call, then we know for the rest of the game that 50-50 call is going to be a charge.
Mm.
So we
Okay.
try and be consistent in that.
Right.
But we aren't starting off in a basketball game. If we go 3.5 quarters and haven't called a hand check, and then all of a sudden we're starting to call hand checks late in the game.
Gonna tick off the players,
Right.
coaches.
Coaches
Yeah.
just want consistency. So a lot of times as a fan, I will be the first one to say, like, you can see better from the stands and you can see better from home than what the referees can see from the field.
Yeah.
You can see in a basketball game, You can see better in the stands than what we do on the basketball court because we have bodies in front of us. So there are
Sure.
things that happen that we are not in a good position to see it. So part of officiating that we constantly are working on and talking about, and what we do in our post game when we watch film, if we have a bad call or miss a call, the first thing that we break down is how do we like our position? Because if we missed a call, it's probably because our position is wrong. So how do we correct it in the future?
Hmm.
So those are the things that we constantly are working on, constantly critiquing. And you think that you're hard on us? Like when we watch film, I mean, we're critiquing how we look when we run.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
we're critiquing on, like in the basketball, if I have my hand up like this, or is it straight? Like is it here, or am I just kind of weak? I mean, we're critiquing everything. So, but our eyes are watching something completely different than what coaches are watching, what players are watching, what the fans are watching.
Hmm.
So in
Yeah.
basketball, I could say we are taught and we have to train ourselves to not ball watch. Everybody ball watches except for hopefully the three officials on the court or two officials on the basketball court, because we're supposed to ref the defense first.
Hmm.
So in every sport, you have to train almost different than what a spectator will watch
Yeah, or
because
even untrained, right? If you've been a fan for so long,
oh
right?
man, it's
Yeah.
it's difficult. That's why, the perfect storm is the younger age group with newer coaches and referees that are still trying to figure out how to referee is the perfect storm. And parents who think all their kids are going to go D1. So
No shortage of those.
Yeah.
Have you
it,
have
it's the
you
perfect
found
storm. So I mean, yeah, I mean, last Saturday, a buddy of mine tossed two fifth grade parents in a girls tournament, like fifth grade girls, and you have to toss
Jeez.
two parents. It's like, come on, it's but it's one of those, like, we train to referee the defense, and when our first question is, what did the defense do wrong? If the defense didn't do something wrong, did the offense do something wrong? Was there illegal contact? And if no, it's legal contact, because even in basketball, it's a contact sport. So just because there's contact doesn't mean that it's illegal contact.
Right.
Now in
Jameson, what were you going to
football,
ask it?
Oh, I was just
yeah,
gonna ask real quick, have you found that changes how you like watch games when you're not officiating, where you're just like, oh my gosh, like what's going on over here? And now you're like, I've trained myself to not ball watch. I have to watch everything except what's actually happening, and now that's driving me insane.
so like basketball, I call the game as a spectator. So I
Yeah.
watch, honestly, I watch the officials. So for me, I've gotten to a place, and I want to continue to improve and grow and get beyond to where I'm at. Because I never thought, when I first started my first year officiating, I started in basketball. I did 1 year of soccer last fall, a year ago, and then I did umpired baseball last season for the first time. And so just kind of branching off into different sports, and but the what I've found is that you yeah, you approach it like how I watch the game now. I watch the officials. Um, Maybe not in those sports. I still find myself like watching where the referees are, or I ask myself, why did they call that? Even in football, I've never done football, but I appreciate the level. Like, people could hate Division 1 or NFL officials for all of a sudden there's a call and you're like, where has this been? Or there's a no call late in the game, but you don't know what they've been watching the whole game, and they've been seeing that same contact the whole game.
Hmm.
So at late in the game, you're looking at a particular play. Was it an important play? Absolutely. But for the whole game, this referee's probably been watching that same matchup, that same contact, and has let it go.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was listening to I think it was Ed Hockley is one of the most famous NFL refs of all time. Gave a rare like I think it was more like a TED Talk style interview um where somebody asked him why he will make a certain call in the fourth quarter, and he echoed what you just said. He said, "Look, if we make a call that seemingly comes out of nowhere or it's not near where the play was made, it's because we had told that coach and that player three, four, five times maybe in that game, knock it off,
Right.
stop doing that. I'm going to have to call it when you don't want me to.
Yep.
You need to stop pulling that jersey. You need to stop putting your hand over his elbow when he reaches up for the ball, whatever it is, you know. And he goes, you know, people don't understand that that has been a discussion all game. And we get to that unfortunate point sometimes where we have to call it. You know, you said a couple of things in your answer about like why is consistency so difficult? Like when you talk about the amateur level meeting the guy that you're going to work with or the two guys you're going to work with 90 minutes before a game, like, you know, even at the college level, like that's something that not nobody's going to really understand. I can imagine the difficulty of, you know, meeting somebody, gauging their personality, trying to understand how they call games. You know, and like you said, there's that different perspective. Do they tend to call the charge or do they tend to let that slide, you know, on a 50-50? You know, and you see all these different crews in the NFL that call things differently. We were talking about I think it was a couple weeks ago or maybe a couple months ago now, about a crew that calls holding all the time. They are the crew that calls holding, and it's almost like they wear that mantle of you're not going to do it in our game and how much it impacts the game. But the NFL's kept that crew together now for 4 straight seasons. They're not mad about it. Do you feel like some crews just got to do that, period, to set a standard?
Well, I think that's the benefit when you have a crew that just kind of sticks together. Coaches know how to prepare their teams.
Hmm.
Fair.
So there are like the Division 2, Division 1, some of the assistant coaches, because they will get the names of the officials before the game. And
Right.
so when they start doing homework or they start recognizing the same name, they know what you're going to get as far as are they going to let physicality? Are they going to call a lot of hand checks? Are they going to call, those are the kind of things that there's some head coaches that could care less. They're going to coach and that's their team and they'll adapt in the game. And that's what really coaches want from the officials in that consistency. If you're going to call hand checks or if you're going to call holding in a football game or pass interference, just be consistent because then we could adapt. But I mean, Pete Carroll was the first one that came out in the NFL and was like, yeah, we're going to do pass interference every time. They're not going to throw the flag every time.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was very public about it. He's like, we
Very
do it all the
well.
time, and he's like, you know, they're gonna either throw a flag every single time, and we're gonna have 6-hour games, or they're not, and you know, we're gonna make some defensive stops.
Yeah.
And it goes
That
back to the art of officiating. We just want a flow to the game.
Right.
Coaches want to be able to coach the players, but if we're constantly blowing a whistle or throwing a flag or those kind of things, coaches can't coach. Players can't play, and parents aren't and the fans aren't watching a good game.
Yeah.
so I'd love to hear a good story about, you know, what is you've seen, because you and I will talk on the phone after one of your games. I've gotten these calls, you guys, so many times where Wes is driving home and he's like, dude, I gotta tell you what just happened. You know, my buddy just threw 2 5th grade parents out of this game this weekend. Like, I mean, he's talked to me about, you know, having to clear gyms, you know, people screaming in his face, the coaches getting ejected. I think there was one time at least that you threw out, I think, all of the coaches in a game or something like that. It was like they had like maybe multiple coaches and you threw multiple out or something like that.
Uh,
Um,
I kept a coach in the game because he wanted to leave because his team was playing so bad. He asked for a second team, and I looked at him and
Dang.
I said, if I have to stay on the court, you have to stay here.
That's awesome. I
Dang,
gotta watch
man.
your team play like garbage. You're staying here with me.
Yeah,
You
I gave
made
him
this bed, now
a
you're gonna
tee in
lay
the
in it.
first. I gave him a tee in the first half, and it was more trying to fire up his team type thing because he asked for it. He's all, "Give me a tee, give me that technical." And I just looked at him like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "They're playing like, give me that," And I was like, "Yeah, you got it." And that second half, they came out of the second half and started playing. And he goes, "Well, this isn't much better. Give me that second tee." I was like, "Nope, you can stay here in this game if I have to." So, yeah, yeah.
What's
I
it?
mean, there's
What was
been like
the?
crazy stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, my mic cut out for just a second. What were you gonna say about like what's an incredible story though that you could lay on them? I'm sure I've heard it, but for the cast here.
Man, there's been some pretty interesting situations. I mean, I had COVID. Okay, during COVID, college was just happy to have a season, but we had no fans. So we're doing senior game. The only ones that could be there is just this one team only had one senior player, and nobody's there except for I don't even think her family was able to make it out to the game. And it was pretty early, like second quarter. She just came down wrong and she broke her arm. And
Oh,
so that was the worst injury that I've had on a game. And we even went to our monitor because we were at a site that had monitor. We went to the monitor and she just tripped over her own feet and just landed wrong and just snapped her arm up here. And it was like a 15-20 minute break. Like the only senior night, COVID year, no fans. It was the most awkward situation.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I mean, like last year, I had a student after the game kind of shoulder bump me after I kicked out his buddy.
Wow.
Okay.
And so that was interesting. I mean,
I mean, they can't get. I mean, they technically got physical with you. Did you?
Like, can you report that kid and get him a suspension?
we told the AD it was it's a site that
Yeah, maybe.
it just needs to be better.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm anxious to get there this year. So
Oh, okay. Okay. He's ready for
um,
that one.
yeah, I mean, I was new in this area where I'm at. It was my first season for high school down in this area, and so I didn't know the schools. I didn't know the coaches. Coaches didn't know me. So it's kind of a feeling out type thing. It's interesting. If a coach doesn't know who you are, they typically will try and jump on you and see what your limit is,
Mm.
and see how much they could get away with. And and as a referee, you kind of have to figure out how your association or your area calls. Like, so we live here in Oregon. High school associations and coaches will say this. You guys played sports. And so, when you go to different areas of the state, things are called a little bit different.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's probably the one thing that I could say in the women's side of college basketball, they are trying to do better is how do we do a training that our officials are trying to be consistent across the board. We know what our point of emphasis are before every season. We have our trainings, but it's the constant videos from our national coordinator that sends out to all of us that we have to watch if we want to be qualified for postseason stuff. Um, so we're constantly getting updated training. And I just wish that even on the state level that we constantly would get stuff like that, not just in our regional areas, because that way we're consistent across the board. Like this year in high school, we had the flop warning.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
So
It's made its way down.
Well, yes, but we're not consistent with travel calls.
It seems like it seems a little reverse there. Like
Yeah.
I feel like
And I can
traveling
tell
should be
you,
more important.
I mean, I like it, but you're not going to be consistent even in your own area with who's giving out flop warnings and who's not,
I
and so
I
it,
love that you say the word flop and Jameson's mic lights up.
So okay, Wes, I do want to ask you because you said it on this show. We have always struggled with when there's a bad call, a no call in the NFL. We
yeah.
talk about it, and then we get reports about interviews afterwards. Reports, that kind of stuff about stuff like points of emphasis. I find that, again, if someone doesn't know that why is it like, oh, we're specifically going to look at these things, like when you said, you said the exact thing, you get notifications and trainings for that stuff. What why don't you just call the game as is, as opposed to trying to, I don't know, it seems like you're forcing like a square into a circle hole or something like that.
So, point of emphasis every year, it's areas that are kind of getting out of control within the game. So, trying to clean up the game. So,
Okay.
in basketball, right now, at all levels, point of emphasis is sportsmanlike behavior, bench
Sure.
decorum. You could just look at, I mean, UConn yesterday and today,
Yep.
Hurley,
Yep.
coach, losing his mind.
Yep.
Hmm.
Like, and then and then losing his mind because he got a T. Well, you literally flopped on the court
Yeah, that part
like
was
a
deserved.
dead fish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
like that's the kind of stuff. It just does not belong.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're even seeing it in the NBA right now, early in the season, some pretty ticky-tack technicals that in the past haven't been there.
Hmm.
So we have the point of emphasis, like, let's get this out of the game because if not, the rules are going to become harder.
Like, I mean, this year in the
Yeah.
NFL, like, I mean, I can't tell you how many illegal formation or illegal shift. Like,
Mother of God.
it's so clear that that is something that they are like. I swear, you get like four a game. Where I maybe got one every 5 games that I
Mhm.
watched. In the past.
Well,
Um,
if you
yeah.
went back and watched every special teams play from the last 2 weeks, you're going to see holding called a bazillion times. It
Yeah.
is ridiculous. The Niners had a run back with Debo to open the second half that went inside the 10-yard line, get called back all the way on the other side. You watch. I think I always forget how to say his name. Salbert, however you say Eric's name, the backup tight end for the Niners. He full on picks a human being up and drops him and is just laughing his head off because he pancaked him so hard. And he gets up and he's like, "That was a hold." They called it on him, and he's just
Right.
like, he's getting high fives from his teammates and coaches, and then they call it all the way back. And Kyle Shanahan, which you don't see him do this a lot, throws the headset and goes after the first referee he can find.
Yeah.
And he's just going, that wasn't a penalty last week or I think ever before in football in the history of this game. And it happened to the Niners the second time on a punt return in that game, just because that's on top of my head, mention it. But like, you see those emphasis points come up, and clearly that's been an issue that they're watching on tape. It's not getting called before, so
Right.
now we're going to start doing it here. And that's what you're saying. That's how you guys are reactive, is to your national coordinators or your regional coordinators sending you that stuff, and that's why we're seeing it take shape the way it does.
Well, it just think NFL, like those referees, if they make a game, if they misuse a rule or they screw up on something, okay, they risk losing one or two games. And when you're talking that, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
You
Yep.
know, who else? You're not going to get a player who purposely holds and prevents a touchdown or something like that. They're not getting fined $100,000, but referees are.
To be fair, that's something that we don't talk about a lot, is that these guys who do make those calls get penalized the way that they do. We've definitely heard of it before, There's been some really big ones in those playoff moments. I mean, we're all thinking about one that affects our team right now, if we're being honest. Jameson might have the most egregious one attached to his team. But we're all thinking of one. But we don't think about that part of it near as often because it's not public information. I mean,
It's not public information, but if a referee at a pro level loses a game, because they will, they because we lose it in college. If I misuse a rule and it totally destroys an outcome of a game, I could lose one or two games. I definitely will lose good games.
dang.
And I risk my contract is up every year. So just because I work college this year doesn't mean I'm working college next year.
Wow. Yeah. No, and that's good perspective for us too. I mean, we've seen a lot of these guys come and go. Every now and then you see a new guy all of a sudden wearing a white hat, looking at the camera, and you've never heard this person speak before. And whether that was an illness or a guy legit losing his job in the off season, or at least as a head of crew, that's a reality that these dudes do face, and probably something we don't think a ton about because we just want them to stop hosing our team and going along with the stupid script that the NFL has written to let the Chiefs win 50,000 Super Bowls in a row. But speaking of bad calls, before we wrap this portion up and we get to our pick'em, real honest moment, okay? What is the worst call that you have ever made? Like, own up to it, make us all feel better. In this moment, what's the worst call? You're like, dang
Are
it,
you
I
gonna
want
get?
that
Are
one back.
you gonna get an angry mob at your front door if you?
He's not gonna say who it is.
The worst call I've ever made.
That poor fifth grader,
That would
Or
have gone to
maybe-
D1 if it wasn't
Yeah,
for you.
D1.
Yeah, maybe
Oh,
could
that
even
was
be a
all
no
of them.
call.
I mean, honestly, I told the coach the other day, I said, "Yeah, I need a shirt that says my whistle's always right," and then on the back it says "until I watch film."
Good shirt, that's a good shirt. Good
You
shirt.
know, so I can tell you, like, every call that I've gotten wrong, for me, I feel like it's the worst call.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fair.
but I would say starting off, because you don't know the rules. You see a travel, and then all of a sudden the ball's going down the other court, and you go, "Crap! I recognized it, I saw it, but I didn't blow the whistle. My
Yeah.
reaction time isn't as fast." Um, I so one of my first games, was closely guarded count. Counting like this, 5 seconds, right? And I go 5 second closely guarded, and we're going the other way. Coach is losing his mind. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, it was 5 second count. Well, 5 second player with the basketball could hold the ball for 5 seconds or 4 seconds and then dribble. That's a brand new 5 second count. And then hold the ball. That's another 5 second count. I didn't know it. Player did all of those things, and I had it closely guarded for 5 seconds and shipped it the other way. And I told the coach, I was like, "That's 5 seconds." And
So do you just? I mean, obviously, I'm sure. I mean, in that instance, you got the call wrong. In those moments, do you just kind of double down, right? Like when you get a call wrong or a no call.
back then, absolutely. I mean, there's referees that will just double down, and they're always going to be right. I've learned to admit when I didn't like a call. Like in basketball, once you blow that whistle, there's no going back. Like,
Right.
I may not like that call. Like when I make that call and I'm walking to the table to report the foul and what I have in my head, I might be going, "I really didn't like that call." And the coach might be losing their mind, and I will walk over to the coach, and the coach is like, "What did they do wrong?" I have looked at coaches and go, "I didn't like that call."
Mm. But you got to walk it out. Okay, in that regard, are there gimmies? Are you doing give backs? Like,
No.
if there's a 50-50 that comes up, are
No,
you throwing it to the other team because you
no,
oopsed earlier?
no, no.
Ruthless
And
out here.
Why make up a bad call with another bad call?
come on.
Hmm.
So all these things that we all sit here and think, us
Yeah.
armchair quarterbacks,
Makeup call,
watching the
classic.
game, we're like, oh, that was a
No, that's a
makeup.
makeup call.
That's
Yeah,
a
no.
makeup.
Listen, we know what's best. Obviously, as
Right.
people who sit here and talk about it, we know what's best.
Yeah.
So
Just like you
clearly,
said, we have the best seat in the house every time. Of course, we have all the answers.
Yes, we
we
do.
know all the rules.
Well, and once again, the camera view sometimes is better than the official's view.
Yeah.
And like in basketball for college, there's only certain times that we are allowed to go to review.
Hmm.
Which
Like
we
we
all
can't,
think is stupid. We
there's
on
certain
this
time.
show,
Yeah.
we
There's
want
certain
you to
times
have it all
we
the time.
can't go to the monitor and reverse a call. So it's only through certain times. And that's going to be for every sport at every level.
Right.
So just because it's a bad call, you just can't go to the monitor and go, "Oh yeah, that's a bad call. We're reversing it."
Oh gosh darn it. Now
Well, the
now
game.
we have to like zebras. Now we have to sit here and
Not
go,
true.
it's not their fault.
Not true.
They don't
I'll
get
like him
the
until they make a
opportunity.
call I disagree with on my team. I'll go.
That's
I'll go
fine.
there
I mean,
because then I won't be able to take the hat off.
But then
And
you
I'll just say they're
have
the
then
worst.
you have some that bet on the side, and so they do make stupid calls.
Dude, that's crazy.
I
Just throw him an
mean,
extra money so they don't have to gamble it. Like,
listen, gosh darn it, man. We're trying to make a case for you people, and you're throwing your own guys under the bus.
Well, that's a small percentage. Small percent.
Small. It's just
I
a
will
few
tell
bad
you-
apples.
well, there's one really popular NBA ref, and he wrote a book and then talked about he was doing it all the time.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but yeah,
Yeah, no longer an NBA ref, by the way.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. He'd been out for
Well,
quite a while.
He
when
wrote the
it.
book, so
He wrote the book because he's not getting paid.
Yeah, what's the harm?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, and I will tell you, I mean, you guys like fans, I was the same way. You watch the game and you kind of stew on one play.
Yep.
You have D1 officials, okay, they'll spend an hour and a half to 2 hours after a game in the locker room, not just cooling down and all that stuff, but they're doing game reports. They're already looking at clips that were sent to them by evaluators.
Mm.
And so like at my level, if I'm the crew chief, I have a game report that I have to submit to my assigner and my trainer within 36 to 48 hours. And so we're rewatching film, we're clipping pertinent plays, we're things that happened in the game that maybe we missed. So we're constantly, just because a game is over for the fan, we are still for weeks talking about it.
My last question for you is legit. Do you think on the professional level that all refs should have to go to a camera, just like players and coaches are mandated by their organizations? The Players Association, the Referees Association. Should they make it the standard that the crew chief or a representative of the crew has to go up and take questions just like everybody else? Should that be mandated in professional sports?
No.
Why not?
The
Why
union
not?
would never allow
Yeah.
it.
Because the questions would be, at what point would a referee get a positive question?
I mean, that part of it's probably fair.
When
That is
you
true.
laugh, that just says it all.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's
My thing also would be selfishly, as much as I would want that portion to be like, oh yeah, the ref is really just having to, take that one on the chin. Like I also don't really want to like know my referees like that. I want to know the crew, I want to know the name, but I don't want referees to all of a sudden have a personality attached to them, because then it's like, okay, well, who's running the show here? Like that's my big issue with a lot of NBA games is you'll have certain refs. It's like they're just going to now say, this is my game. I'm going to call this incredibly soft tee, or I'm going to call this crazy foul. And now all of a sudden you're playing by my rules. And it's ref ball. Like I feel like if you start opening that up, especially for football, and saying like we're identifying
Like a
these
certain
people
umpire
as
in baseball.
Oh,
exactly, like as
oh
soon
yeah,
as you
no.
start,
We have spent some time on this podcast
yeah,
I mean,
talking
like
about a certain
the witch
it
is
referee in
dead.
is
Like
baseball.
ding dong, the
Right?
witch is dead. That one.
it
But
is never a good thing when you know a referee by name.
Right.
And so there's not like a good atmosphere, I think, for that to happen and have it not just be, we're going to crap all over you now.
Unless it's Ed
You
Hockley,
just said it.
because, you know,
A good game is a game that you hardly recognize the officials on the field.
that's good. Yep.
That's a good game.
Yeah.
You know, and I could tell you that for the majority of officials in all sports, that is what we want. We don't want
Well,
to determine the outcome, but sometimes we're put in the position that we have to. And it's
well,
not that we determine the outcome, that either the player did or the coach did.
we do not want that as fans at all, and that's what we're going to probably keep screaming our heads off about. These refs that determine games. But I appreciate the perspective tonight, because I think it's really good for us to remember, you know, especially if you're not just watching these games in the NFL where you're seeing every angle, but you're sitting under the Friday night lights, watching, you know, your kids or your nephew. You know, you're in a gym somewhere out in middle America, watching two rival towns that hate each other's guts, you know, on Saturday night, trying to button down some defense and just lock in on each other and get that dub for the division win and the conference championship. It's good for all of us to hear the perspective and understand, like, hey, there's a lot in play here that we don't know about that goes on behind the scenes to prepare these guys for this. And I think it's really good to remember they aren't watching the view that we're watching. They don't have that elevated position. They're meeting each other 90 minutes before games. They are, you know, constantly having to do a lot of extra homework, and they also all have jobs and lives. And this is
And
extra in there for them.
and we have life. We're humans, and that's when sometimes I wish that you could just turn the camera on the fans and the coaches and let them watch replays of themselves.
I don't ever want that. Nope.
Because
Not even
I
a little
mean,
bit.
the way that sometimes we're yelled at, it's like, you know, the worst officiating game I've ever had to officiate was the night that I found out that my mom was probably not going to make it through the night. And I refereed 2 JV games on the coast because there was no replacements. And to have a fan look at me and say, "You're a homer ref," which I'm not even from close to that area,
Sure.
you know, and it was because of my partner of a bad call who was brand new. But yet here we are on the coast, and I know that as soon as I get home, I'm either hopping in the car, driving several hours to not knowing if my mom would make it or if she would even be alive when I get there. You know, those are the things that people don't understand. Like, you're dealing with human beings that are dealing with either lost a job that day or maybe going through a divorce or this or that, or you know, we just lost a good friend of mine who officiated 3 sports down in Southern Oregon, cancer that took him pretty quick. And here you have, towards the end of the season, the Football Association finding out that he passed away at 8:47 at night as guys are going back to their locker room, checking their phone and finding out that their buddy, who they knew going into the game wasn't going to make it through the night, to find out that he passed away. Like, those are the things. That's what I love about officiating, that if people are even thinking about wanting or interested in the community the family that you build, because nobody understands it until you run the court or run the field. But the community that's there, it's lifelong.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's cool.
That's awesome. I think as much as we love being lighthearted on the show and making fun of Grant, you know, it's a good
That's
moment
always
for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun. But
I enjoy
it's a
it.
good perspective for all of us tonight too, And so, we just appreciate you giving us the time to do that, and to give us a little insight on what it is to be on on the court and getting screamed at, and dealing with what you guys do on a nightly basis. While we all wish it didn't affect our games to the detriment of our teams, we are glad that you're there to call those things on the other guys. So we are glad for that, and we do appreciate it.
Well, if it wasn't for the human error, you would have AI calling it. So, and then nobody would like it.
No, probably not. Probably not. And then they would call holding on every play. So forget those guys.